They will not tell you this directly, but the truth is simple. Most people are not defeated by toxic individuals. They are defeated by their own reactions to them, because toxic people rarely have real power. They don't control your life, they don't control your choices, and they don't control your future. What they control is far more subtle. They control how long you stay emotionally involved in something that was never worth your energy in the first place. And the moment you react, explain, defend, argue, or emotionally engage, you are not just responding anymore, you are participating. You are stepping into a game that was designed to drain you, distract you, and slowly disconnect you from your own peace. But what if the real power was never in fighting back? What if it was in becoming unresponsive in the ways they expect you to respond? What if the strongest version of you is not the one who reacts faster, speaks louder, or proves more, but the one who becomes so internally stable that other people can no longer predict your emotional movement? Because here is what they don't want you to realize. Toxic behavior does not survive in silence. It does not survive in emotional neutrality. It does not survive in people who stop explaining themselves, stop overreacting, stop over-engaging, and start observing instead of absorbing. And once you reach that state, something strange happens. The same people who used to disturb your mind start losing access to it. The same situations that used to pull you into chaos start feeling powerless. The same conversations that used to drain you start losing meaning. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And if you stay with me until the end of this message, you will understand exactly how people quietly reach that level where toxic individuals no longer control their emotions, their attention, or their peace, and why most people never even realize this shift is possible until it's too late. Stop over-explaining yourself. This is where most people lose their power without even realizing it. They think communication is about clarity, but with the wrong people, communication becomes self-incrimination. The more you talk, the more material you give them. The more you justify, the more they find something to question. And slowly, without noticing it, you begin to argue your way out of your own peace. There's a psychological trap here that very few people recognize. When you are dealing with toxic personalities, they are not listening to understand you. They are listening to find openings. Every extra sentence you add is not helping your case. It is extending the conversation long enough for them to regain control. And control in these dynamics is not loud. It is subtle. It is not about shouting or dominance. It is about who is still emotionally engaged when the conversation is over. The person who is still explaining is the person who is still inside the interaction. And that is where the imbalance begins. You have to understand something important about human behavior. Healthy people ask questions to understand. But manipulative people ask questions to create confusion. So when you start answering everything in detail, you assume good intent where there is none, and that assumption becomes your vulnerability. There is a point where explanation stops being clarity and starts becoming negotiation. You are no longer sharing your perspective. You are trying to earn acceptance for it. And the moment you start earning acceptance for your boundaries, they are no longer boundaries. They are requests. Think about how often people say things like, "Let me explain myself," or "You're misunderstanding me," or "That's not what I meant." On the surface, it sounds reasonable. But emotionally, it places you in a defensive position. You are now reacting to someone else's interpretation instead of standing firm in your reality. And here is the shift that changes everything. Not everything misunderstood needs correction. Some things are not meant to be clarified endlessly. Some things are meant to be stated once and left untouched. Because clarity does not require repetition. It requires confidence. When you are grounded in your truth, you don't chase people to agree with it. You allow them to interpret it, misunderstand it, accept it, or reject it. But you do not enter emotional negotiations just to make them comfortable with your decisions. Toxic dynamics often survive on this cycle. They provoke, you explain, they challenge, you defend, and suddenly the entire conversation becomes about your tone, your intention, your wording, anything except the original issue. That is not communication. That is displacement. And the more you participate in that cycle, the more you lose track of your own position. At some point, you have to realize that peace is not maintained by being understood. Peace is maintained by refusing to over-engage with misunderstanding. There is a quiet strength in saying less, not because you are hiding something, but because you are no longer trying to convince people who have already decided how they want to see you. That is emotional maturity. That is psychological distance. That is where control shifts back to you. And when you stop over-explaining, something interesting happens. The same people who used to pull you into long emotional debates start losing interest. Because manipulation requires engagement, and explanation is engagement. When you remove that, you remove the fuel. You begin to notice that silence is not weakness. It is structure. It is discipline. It is the decision to not turn every misunderstanding into a courtroom where you are constantly defending yourself. Because here is the deeper truth most people miss. The need to constantly explain yourself is often rooted in the fear of being misjudged. But the more you try to prevent misjudgment, the more dependent you become on other people's perception. And that dependency is exactly what toxic dynamics exploit. Freedom begins the moment you accept this. You cannot control how people interpret you, but you can control how much access they get to your explanation. So you speak clearly, you set the boundary once, you state your decision without emotional overextension, and then you stop, not out of arrogance, not out of anger, but out of awareness. Because every unnecessary explanation is a door you are reopening to people who have already shown you they don't respect your boundaries. And when you finally understand this, your communication becomes minimal, your presence becomes calm, and your energy becomes unavailable for manipulation. You stop arguing your worth, you stop defending your peace, you stop explaining your decisions to people who benefit from your doubt. And in that silence, something powerful happens. You are no longer easy to pull into emotional chaos. You become harder to access, harder to influence, harder to disturb, because people can only control what keeps responding. And when you stop responding with explanations, you stop giving them control over your mind. That is the moment everything changes. Not when you speak more, but when you finally realize you don't need to. Stay emotionally neutral under pressure. This is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength, because people assume strength is intensity. They think being strong means being loud, reactive, or emotionally charged. But in reality, the most unshakable people are not the ones who react the strongest, they are the ones who react the least. Because when you react emotionally, you are not just responding to a situation, you are entering someone else's control system. Toxic people don't need to overpower you physically or even logically. They only need one thing from you: emotional movement. If they can make you angry, defensive, anxious, or overly excited, they are no longer dealing with your logic. They are dealing with your emotional state. And once your emotional state is activated, your judgment becomes unstable. That is the hidden game most people don't see. Every provocative comment, every subtle insult, every passive-aggressive remark is not random. It is a test, not a test of your intelligence, but a test of your emotional accessibility. They are checking, can I still move this person? Can I still get a reaction? Can I still shift their internal state with minimal effort? And the moment you respond emotionally, you answer their question without realizing it. You confirm that you are still reachable. This is why emotional neutrality is not detachment from life. It is control over your internal environment. It means your emotional state is no longer at the mercy of external behavior. You are no longer allowing someone else's instability to become your response. Think about what usually happens in difficult